Hello, lovers of all forms of media. We've got a great one for you today with reviews of two brand new TV shows from Louie Wieseman and Kratkoczki, a look at a major player in the music industry from Allyson Edmonds, and a whole lot more.
So get nice and comfortable because from Ball State University, The Real Deal starts now.
Hello and welcome to The Real Deal, Ball State's one and only entertainment news show. I'm Connor Fack.
And I'm Romelle Taday. Now, one of the fields of movie making that is constantly evolving is that the special effects. Sometimes filmmakers are able to pull things off that leave audiences stunned.
So, our very own Danny Yount is going to answer the age-old question of how'd they do that in relation to a rather profane teddy bear from recent memory. Danny?
With Ted 2 coming out this year, it's only appropriate to sing the Thunder song. Here we go, sing it with me, Thunder Buddies. Never mind. Anyways, aside from the buffoonish character, the lovable and huggable Ted, well, I hate to break the news to you, but he isn't real. That's right, he's basically a walking piece of colored computer information, as he is an animated character. But how exactly is this process done? Well, it starts with the beginning sketches. Ted was just a single Photoshop image as concept art. After they worked with the concept art, they did a motion capture, or mocap, of the character. There were many techniques included in the animation of Ted on set. One technique included Seth MacFarlane delivering lines on set wearing a super special high-tech suit that would capture his motion to provide basic character movements. This was used every time Ted had a dramatic scene with an actor. With this technology, it was immensely easier to animate the character as opposed to figuring out the motions later. For intense fight scenes, Mark Wahlberg, the main actor, would jab rods to reference where Ted was. This required a lot of time and precision to have him interact with the scene. Some complications with this character came with thinking of gravity and physical interaction with other characters. Since Ted is basically a walking bag of fluff, the same laws of gravity still have to apply to him as they do to everyone else. After all of the motion was tracked, they would add shading, lighting, and fur. That's how it all went down, and believe it or not, as real as he looks, Ted does not exist in our real world. It takes the heart and tedious precision of a team of animators to bring this wonderful R-rated stuffed animal to life. That's all for How'd They Do That. I'm Danny Yount.
Thanks, Danny. It sounds like a lot of time and effort went into the special effects for Ted.
I think we can all agree to that. I also think that we can all agree that action movies can use similar types of effects for maximum thrill, especially with recent advances in effect technology.
However, some may argue that in recent years, action movies may not be quite as hard-hitting as they used to be. Here to air his grievances about this trend is Chauncey Baker. What's on your mind, Chauncey?
I love action movies. I've seen the first two Terminator films over 100 times, Predator at least 50, and all three of the Die Hards almost as many times as the Terminator. Okay, there are more than 3 Die Hard films, but I'm going to act like they didn't happen. Oh yeah, and I can't forget RoboCop. These films were violent, thrilling, and intelligent at the same time. For instance, Die Hard appears like a simple film about a man trying to save his wife from a group of terrorists in the headquarters of a mega corporation, but it's really about family, love, and justice. How about Predator? You know, the Arnie film where there's an invisible alien thingy picking off a group of mercenaries that also includes Carl Weathers and Jesse the Body Ventura. That movie rocked. Its sequels, not so much. Did I forget to mention the blood, guts, and gunfire and plenty of witty one-liners that involved the F-bomb? Another film that I'm still really fond of is RoboCop with Peter Weller. You know, the one that is very iconic in 1980s. But it is still really awesome and very fun to watch. On a side note, I own several RoboCop comic books and action figures that were released in the late 90s, so you could say I'm a fan. They remade that one into a PG-13 action film 2 years ago. This is the same franchise that involves a man that has his arms and legs blown off with a shotgun and ultimately ends up with a bullet in the head and somehow is revived into a powerful cyborg cop with no memory of his former life. They took away its guts, so to speak. Yeah, it still had the satire about consumerism, but its spine was taken away. We do have the occasional one like The Kingsman that comes along, but it's few and far in between. I mean, even The Expendables 3, a series that was once known for its blood and guts, and had stars from that era like Stallone, Bruce Willis, and Arnold. I understand the fact that an R-rated film statistically doesn't do as well at the box office, and the bottom line matters to these production companies, but the resulting product isn't nearly as entertaining or fun to watch. Maybe I'm missing the point, but it's really upsetting that we don't have any charismatic and awesome action stars to the extent of Arnie and Sly. I guess Jason Statham comes close, but it just isn't the same. I'm Chauncey Baker, and do you remember when action films were R-rated and fun? I do.
Thanks, Chauncey. While we can't promise to be an R-rated roller coaster like Chauncey's looking for, we can guarantee that we still have a great show ahead, with Louie Wieseman reviewing a new TV show's pilot, Allyson Edmonds' spotlight on a major player in the music industry, and a whole lot more.
So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You think you're real?
You don't get away with this.
He's special!
I am consciousness. I am alive. I am Jeppy.
It'll get you killed.
How's it feel?
There's two kinds of people in this world. There's hammers and nails. You decide which one you want to be. Trouble understanding you people sometimes. You all talk so funny.
I have to see her again.
Are you looking for this?
Thank you for sticking with us. Now, Romelle, I have a question for you. What would you do if you were the last person on Earth?
Well, there wouldn't be much of anything to keep me company, so I don't quite know the answer to that.
Well, a recent sitcom is trying to answer that question in a very unique way, and here giving a pilot watch of The Last Man on Earth is Louie Wieseman. What did you think, Louie?
On March 1st, Fox debuted a brand new TV show titled The Last Man on Earth. It stars Will Forte, the SNL alum, as Phil Miller as, the title of the show suggests, The Last Man on Earth. The show, as of this taping, has only 4 episodes, only 3 weekends. So far, the general consensus of the show has been met with pretty good. The biggest worry of the program is the direction it could take after the first few initial episodes. The show is a more unique one based on its style of post-apocalyptic themes and the parody of it. I'm reminded a bit of Zombieland in its way of making fun of the genre. Miller is definitely lonely, and we see this very quickly in just the first episode. He even contemplates suicide by the end of the first episode. It was a very quick peek in character development in that first episode, but I'll give it the benefit of the doubt since we are trying to learn about Miller and it's early on in the show. The way it makes fun of the post-apocalyptic world is by showing Miller's ways of having fun without having anyone tell him what to do. This includes blowtorching toilet paper and wigs and playing bowling with his truck, rolling bowling balls out of the back of his truck into aquariums. After an attempt all around the country to find another person, he returns home to Tucson, Arizona to hope someone finds him. Before his suicide attempt, this is where he learns that he isn't the last man on Earth. There's another person, and it's a woman. Carol Poblazian, played by the Kristen Schull from Flight of the Conchords and Bob's Burgers, almost immediately gets on Miller's nerves in a hilarious fashion. It was a trope seen coming, but with Shaw and Forte playing these characters, it works well. From making Miller park in a normal parking spot when going to a hardware store, or making him carry around a walkie-talkie, she also has gone a bit nuts. But that might have been before the virus wiped everyone out. Like I mentioned, the show was good. It's funny playing off the ridiculousness that Miller chooses to do as the last man on Earth. Forte is simply a funny guy to play this character and a great fit. Lots of good character development in these first few episodes show the cracks already that could be used for many premises of future episodes. It's going to be a wonder how they can continue the direction of the show. Already, Miller's been shown he isn't the last man on Earth, or at least in the US. There's already been a third character introduced by the third episode, so I wonder if they could keep going with the idea of Miller being the last man on Earth without having to pull out too many cheap gimmicks too quickly. Overall, I give Last Man on Earth 4.5 stars out of 5. It's a decent idea for a show done excellently, but can possibly stammer and hopefully not jump the shark too early. Or worse, Fox pulls the let's cancel the good show too early trick on Last Man like the other shows Firefly and Arrested Development. I'm Louie Wieseman, and this has been your Pilot Watch.
Thanks, Louie. Sounds like this show is shaping up to be a mover and shaker in television.
And speaking of movers and shakers, Big Sean has been doing just that in the music industry for quite some time. And here to give a profile on him is Allyson Edmonds. What do you have for us, Allyson?
Today I want to shed some light on hip-hop rapper Big Sean. Born as Sean Michael Leonard Anderson, Sean was raised by a single mother and didn't have a very easy life coming up. Now, he began rapping in his basement at just the age of 6, and he hasn't stopped since. Sean did rap battles at various different radio stations trying to get his name known in the business. In 2005, Kanye West discovered the young artist, and in 2007, West made a special attempt to see him battle at a Detroit hip-hop radio station and signed him on the spot. Now, Sean produced multiple mixtapes but didn't release his first album until 2011, titled Finally Famous. With 3 #1 singles, the album sold nearly 90,000 copies within the first week. Now, working with stars such as Chris Brown, Kanye West, Drake, Wiz Khalifa, Rick Ross, and many, many more, Sean's album sold almost 400,000 copies after his songs worked their way through the industry. Now, his next album, Hall of Fame, wasn't as famous as his first, selling 15,000 copies less than the Finally Famous album. Now, when he finally released his second album after pushing back the date, he was already working on his third album, titled Dark Sky Paradise, released this past February. The album debuted on the Billboard 200, making it his first #1 album. Now, a huge congrats goes out to him. Now, Sean claims that this album was inspired by his current girlfriend, Ariana Grande. Now, the album has already sold over 1 million records and counting. Big Sean is on his way to a very successful career, and people definitely shouldn't sleep on him. He is a very dedicated musician, and everyone should make sure that they look out for his album. That's all from me. Back to our host.
Thanks, Allyson. Now, before we go to commercial, we have something very special in store for you.
Recently, the one and only Rainn Wilson of The Office and Soul Pancake fame gave a talk on leadership here at Ball State, and our very own Isaac Watley had the opportunity to interview him.
So, enjoy the interview, and we'll be right back afterwards.
Okay, so Isaac actually has a few cool tweets to talk to you about.
Okay.
Yes, we've been so excited for your visit, and
Yes.
I'm representing the Real Deal BSU, which is an entertainment news show here run by students at Ball State, and we use the hashtag AskRainnWilsonBSU just to see what some of the students had to say. So the first question comes from Anna Bowman and says, in your opinion, what is the most important issue that Soul Pancake confronts?
What's the most important issue that Soul Pancake confronts? I would say the most important issue that it confronts is negativity. It's really easy on the web to cut people down, to backbite, to gossip, to just covet material things, to uselessly waste hours and hundreds of hours of times. And so we want to give people hope, but not in a treacly way. That's a tricky thing, you know, dealing with like issues like giving hope and uplifting. It sounds like, oh, it sounds boring. We try and do it really in an entertaining way that has some teeth to it. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Welcome back to the show. You know, Romelle, our first break just demonstrated a major difference between our show and the main character of the show that's about to be discussed.
And what's that?
Well, unlike title character Kimmy Schmidt, we here at The Real Deal are not unbreakable.
Sure. Anyways, with the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt getting a lot of notoriety, many are wondering if it's worth streaming. Here with his review of the series is our very own Brandon Kratkoczki.
It's easy to forget that Netflix used to only be a service for streaming older movies and TV shows. In the last few years, they've become a force to be reckoned with in the field of self-produced content, with Orange is the New Black, House of Cards, and the revival of Arrested Development all proving to be great successes. Fortunately, their latest, Tina Fey's The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, continues this streak of quality content, proving to be simultaneously hilariously well-written, well-acted, and a refreshing ray of non-cynicism. Now, the show follows its eponymous lead as she and her fellow mole women are freed from the captivity of an insane cult leader after 15 years. Kimmy decides that she wants to restart her life and plot her own course, so she moves to New York City, where she ends up working for an upper-class family as a general assistant. The show definitely has a sharp, perverse wit that we can expect from any Tina Fey project, with biting jokes and bizarre pop culture references flying every which way at any given time. Of course, what good is great dialogue without great performances to back up the words? Ellie Kemper is a complete delight as Kimmy, fully illustrating the never-ending fortitude and optimism of this incredibly strong woman. She is also able to skillfully integrate a certain sense of darkness and scarring in relation to what happened in the bunker at what she and the other mole women had to go through. Jane Kratkoczki is expectedly great as Jacqueline, the somewhat unstable upper-class housewife and somewhat reprise of her Jenna Maroney from 30 Rock. Broadway veteran Titus Burgess steals a large portion of his scenes as Titus Andromedon, a larger-than-life struggling actor who decides to room with Kimmy. Also worth mentioning is Jeff Richman's score, whose incredible work on 30 Rock can very much be felt here. Now, on top of all of that, the show has a certain sense of full-hearted non-cynicism, something that can, at times, feel unfortunately absent from much of network television. In that sense, it slightly reminded me of the positivity that Parks and Recreation supplied when it was still on the air. Now, of course, as a show just getting its sea legs, the Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt isn't without flaw. In the first few episodes, there's a sense that the show is still trying to figure out exactly where it wants to go, so it's not uncommon for characters or plots to be dropped completely, or for the occasional plotline to feel a little sloppy. In addition, there are some characterizations that felt flat and underdeveloped, such as Dong, Kimmy's primary love interest in the back half of the season. But overall, The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt is a delightful, dark, hilarious time, and we can only anticipate where Faye and company will go from here. I give the first season of the show 4 stars out of 5. Definitely stream this through Netflix if you can. The whole season is up now. That's it for my review of The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. I'm Brandon Kratkoczki.
Thanks, Brandon. Sounds like The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt is definitely worth watching.
Now, another piece of entertainment that was heavily streamed recently was Seth Rogen and James Franco's The Interview after facing controversy in light of the film's content and Sony hacking fiasco.
Many streamed the movie because they felt some kind of patriotism-fueled obligation to watch it. Here to share his thoughts on that mindset is Logan Sowash. What's your take on all this, Logan?
Well, guys, over spring break, I decided to give the popular and controversial film American Sniper a viewing. While I won't go into detail as to how I felt about the film, let's just say that it wasn't the worst film Eastwood has made recently, but it also wasn't his best. However, I feel like I need to discuss a few certain issues involving this film and another little film that came out last December you probably heard of called The Interview. What is the main issue about this? Well, let us dive into this week's edition of The Rant. One of the most prominent words associated with both American Sniper and The Interview was patriotism. It was hard to look through social media in December and January without seeing several friends and family members talking about how patriotic it is to go see both of these films, though for different reasons. This is funny for me personally because all I saw in both those films was an Oscar bait war film and an excellent marketing ploy for a Seth Rogen and James Franco film that was going to bomb on Christmas Day without some sort of help. Look, for The Interview specifically, I'm not putting my tinfoil hat on and saying that Sony hacks were fabricated solely to market the film, but you can't help but agree that the Seth Rogen and Franco film were helped by the hacks. And it got a lot more than it did with the initial advertising alone, especially with a truckload of other films coming out that same Christmas Day. Heck, I even think the film was hurt by the hacks in some way because it just couldn't meet the hype that was created through weeks and weeks of controversy. Overall, I liked The Interview, and I'd watch it again, but I honestly felt more tricked than patriotic while initially watching it. Now on to American Sniper. One of the biggest problems with the buzz surrounding this film is that a lot of people who enjoyed it took offense towards those who didn't, even going as far as questioning one's own faith to their country. Just to clarify, not everyone who enjoyed this movie are like that, though it is hard to ignore those who do act this way because I cannot fathom this way of thinking. American Sniper is entertainment. It is not a special film that makes you more or less patriotic depending on how you view it. It is a film funded by a corporation, focus tested to be appealing to the majority and to get as much money as possible from us, the consumers. Questioning another person's patriotism should not involve a Bradley Cooper vehicle directed by Dirty Harry, especially one that comes out in January. In the end, it's going to be weird having to describe the situation to future generations as to why these two films in particular caused so much controversy in such a short amount of time. It's going to be difficult and a bit embarrassing when we tell them how too heavily funded and, in my opinion, mediocre films caused so many to question each other's love of country. Thankfully, it seems like the situation that'll be laughed off and deemed silly as time passes. Plus, we don't need these films to feel patriotic. We already have the best patriotic symbol currently. Isn't that right, Captain America? I'm Logan Sowash. That was my rant. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Logan. Now, we have to go to a break, but you won't necessarily need to think of sticking around for the final word as your patriotic duty.
We can, however, promise intriguing discussion and entertainment. So, stick around.
You are the key, Triss, to rescue what little civilization we have left.
No pressure. I'm not gonna let you do it. You're real. Yeah, I'm real.
Take out your cross and let it be a reminder of the amazing gift that Christ has given us. And let it inspire us to live our life the way Jesus lived his.
You ever have one of those days when everything's going wrong and everybody wants to kill you for something?
I can see the company's perspective. You're the last real threat on the table.
And we got nothing left to talk about. I'm the man that you aren't.
I don't know what to say. I don't need you to say anything, man. I just need you to leave. You're gonna have to deal with it because I'm here. You can't buy redemption. Dinner tomorrow?
You know what I like about you? You never give up.
Some dinners are worth fighting for.
Welcome back. Movies can make us laugh and they can make us cry. Personally, I prefer the former.
And some of the best comedy classics came out of the 1980s. 2 weeks ago, we covered some of the work of Ghostbusters writer Harold Ramis, and this week we're taking a look at two continually popular pictures by another 80s power hitter, John Hughes.
Known for his offbeat comedies and coming-of-age teen movies, Hughes was the writer-director behind 16 Candles, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and Uncle Buck, but never directed another film after 1991, despite writing another dozen more.
Hughes passed away from a heart attack in 2009 at just 59 years old, but his comedy genius lives on in his films. Here with two of those, this is The Final Word.
The Hughes film that stands out for me is a fulfillment of basically every kid's idea of the best sick day imaginable. Any guesses? Anybody? Anybody? Bueller? Bueller?
Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
Yes, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. How did you guess? The rollicking comedy stars a young Matthew Broderick in the role that shot him to stardom as Ferris Bueller, a charming yet mischievous high schooler who skips school along with his best friend, portrayed by Alan Ruck, and girlfriend, portrayed by Mia Sara, in order to have an unforgettable day in downtown Chicago. They borrow his friend Cameron's father's 1961 Ferrari to get there, and end up in the Sears Tower, Wrigley Field, a gourmet restaurant, and even the middle of a parade. And the only thing that might possibly spoil their fun is the kid's suspicious principal, played by Jeffrey Jones, who is convinced, correctly, that they're playing hooky. It's equal parts unbridled fun and close calls in a battle to see if their escapades will have consequences, but I don't want to spoil it. Hughes reportedly wrote the film in just a week, and the finished product differs little from that initial draft. Hughes grew up in the suburbs near Chicago and began his career there and worked to include as many landmarks from the city in the film as possible, almost all of which are still there today. As he later said in an interview with the Chicago Sun-Times newspaper, quote, "Chicago is what I am. A lot of Ferris is sort of like my love letter to the city," end quote. Critics and audiences alike have loved the film for its happiness and freedom, and I do the same. What's your Hughes pick, Romelle?
Well, my favorite John Hughes films happens to be celebrating a big anniversary this year. The Breakfast Club, released in 1985, is a coming-of-age dramedy that follows 5 teenagers from various cliques and walks of life who spend a Saturday detention together. Starring Emilio Estevez as Andrew the Jock, Anthony Michael Hall as Brian the Brain, Judd Nelson as Bender the Criminal, Molly Ringwald as Claire the Princess, and Ali Sheedy as Allyson the Basket Case. The 5 students eventually bond with each other and come to learn that they are more than just their labeled stereotype. Noted as one of Hughes' most memorable and recognizable works, The Breakfast Club has also been constantly considered by critics as one of the greatest high school films. Celebrating its 30th anniversary this year, much of The Breakfast Club has also found its limelight in author Kirk Honeycutt's forthcoming book, John Hughes, A Life in Film, to be published in March 25th. In an excerpt about the famed teen flick, Honeycutt reveals how Hughes' conception of the story highly confused Universal's front office, and they couldn't understand the concept behind what became his most famous film. Universal sought out bare breasts, a party scene, guys drinking beer, the things they thought a teen picture needed. With that, ex-National Lampooner Hughes was still searching for the right tone for his own brand of teen film, and wrote in a very convoluted scene of gratuitous female nudity in the screenplay. What I thought was thoroughly impressive to what was to come next was the reaction of the 2 young actresses, Ringwald and Sheedy, along with co-producer Michelle Manning, who ganged up on him and objected the highly sexist and misogynistic tone of the film that was going to take on. Hughes listened and rewrote the entire concept, and thank goodness he did. The greatness that it is today, The Breakfast Club had paved the way for alternative storytelling and has entered the hearts of various generations of high school students across the nation. In celebration of the anniversary, the 30th Anniversary Edition DVD came out this month, and the film has been digitally remastered to be screened in over 400 select theaters across the U.S. from March 26th to the 31st.
And that wraps up our show for this week. Be sure to check out our website, Facebook, and Twitter pages for news and updates on all things entertainment. I'm Connor Fack.
And I'm Romelle Taday. We'll see you next time.